Okay, I'm going to get started. So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Riel. I'm the Program and Events Manager with the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. I just want to start off by acknowledging that we're gathered today on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional land of the Ojibway, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene Nations, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. Thank you all for joining us today for a Networking 101 session with Shelley Cook. This is our first one of the season, so I'm excited about it. I don't know if any of you all here follow Shelley on Twitter. I know I do. I'm a silent Twitter viewer, I guess. I don't say anything. I just read all the things. But I'm excited for this presentation with Shelley today. So Shelley is a born and raised Winnipegger, pardon me, and an off-reserve community member of Brokenhead Ojibway Nation. Shelley has worked in the communications field since 2011 after graduating from Red River College's Creative Communications program. She is a columnist and the manager of the Reader Bridge at the Winnipeg Free Press, and she'll tell us a little bit about how that position came to be, and has previous experience working as a social media coordinator for Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries and as a freelance writer. She has a knack for telling a good story, a trait she likely inherited from her dad, one of the most engaging and interesting storytellers of all time. So with that, I will pass it off to you, Shelley, and thank you so much for hosting us today. You're on mute. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Hey, thanks so much for having me. Thank you for everybody who showed up today. I was going to introduce myself too. I'm still going to do it. But thank you. I'm so humbled to be here this morning to talk to you guys about Twitter. When the Chamber and Riel asked me to do this, I'm a hand talker. I was humbled. I was a little bit stunned. This isn't really my foray, public speaking, but you know, I like to try new things, so why not? We're all going to go on this adventure together of me speaking, so let's get into it. I'm also new with sharing my screen. Oh, there we go. So things that we're going to be discussing today. Honestly, we're just going to be having a heart to heart about Twitter. I'm not so much an expert on social media. I'm good at it. I hope that doesn't sound too vain, but it's helped me in my life and my career. I've invested a lot of time and myself into it. And I just wanted to kind of share my experience on this platform that is often touted as kind of a negative cesspool sort of place to hang out online. For me, it hasn't been that experience, and perhaps I can share with you and maybe you can gain some from my insights. So, who am I? My name is Shelley Cook. My pronouns are she, her. I'm mom, stepmom, dog mom. I'm a partner to Chris, and I live on Treaty 1 territory. I'm a proud member of Brokenhead Ojibway Nation, and I live in sunny St. James. You might know me if you follow me on Twitter as Shelley A. Cook, although the A comes because when I joined Twitter, somebody had already taken the handle, so I had to add the A. So it's my middle name. It doesn't mean much. It wasn't really a thought. A little bit about me. I'm a columnist. I'm the manager of the Reader Bridge at the Winnipeg Free Press, and I also do a little freelance writing every now and then. Prior to working at the Free Press, I was the social media coordinator for Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries for 9 years. So if you've ever interacted with the casinos of Winnipeg or Liquor Mart's social media accounts, I guess, except for last year, that would have been me. So we would have had an interaction. So let's get started. I joined Twitter in 2009. When I joined, I had no idea what I was doing. I also had no idea that this platform would become a sort of resume and sense of community for me. I started my very first tweet by saying, trying to figure this Twitter thing out. I'm sure many of you have also, this is your first tweet. Except for mine was at 5:16 in the morning on February 28th, 2009. To give you an idea of that timeline, we're just going to go back because the world was a different place back then. I worked really hard on this part of the presentation. Barack Obama was in his first term, in his first month of being president of the United States. Flo Rida's Right Round was #1 on the Billboard charts, with Lady Gaga's Just Dance being #5 and Taylor Swift's Love Story being #7. Oops, here we go. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen got married on this actual day. And Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal led their team to victory for the 58th annual the All-Star game at the US Airways Center in Phoenix, Arizona. So it was a lifetime ago. Fast forward to 2021, Twitter has become a really important tool and social media outlet for me, and it's the reason that I actually have my job at the Winnipeg Free Press today. So I'm going to just tell you the story of how that happened. So last year, COVID hit and we started lockdown. I got temporarily laid off of my job at Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. You know, and I get it. Like, I was devastated. I'd never been laid off before, and I'd never really been off except for mat leave a couple years earlier. So I was nervous, like most people who were in that situation. And I was basically had spent my entire life working for this corporation because I had started at the casino when I was 20 years old, and I had worked my way up to the head office. So I got laid off in my 20th year of employment there. And to be honest, I thought at that time, and I think this has changed a lot, but at the time I thought that I was more valuable than I was to the team. Now, this is not a knock at them. They had to make hard decisions and they had to lay people off. But I thought, as the world was shutting down and as casinos were closing and hours were changing and stores were closing and people were being laid off, I thought, well, you know what? Social media is the one thing that is staying normal. You know, I mean, the content may be different, but it's staying normal. It's constant. It's there. I will have a job. And so as my colleagues were being laid off, I wasn't too worried until one day I got the phone call, excuse me, and I was laid off. It turns out that we had done a really good job at Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries of setting a good tone and a good voice for our brands. So while our social media was very important in those times, we had done a really good job of training my manager to be able to run the accounts without me. Now, again, I want to be clear, this is not a reflection on the company, and this is not to bash them. They had to make a hard decision, and of course, they had to lay off a lot of people. So, of course, why not me? So after that phone call, when my poor manager had to lay me off, I stood in my kitchen and I was bewildered. And my partner was like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I just started to bawl. Like, I started to cry. I was so scared. I have 3 kids. I have a mortgage. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I told my partner, obviously, what happened. And then another thing that I did was that I turned to Twitter. And this is something I've done throughout my life. And it may sound a bit corny, but in a lot of my big moments, having my daughter, getting new jobs, I've turned to my community on Twitter, and they've always been there for me. And this was no exception. So I tweeted the previous tweet, and I was really upset and I was really vulnerable. And the outpouring was incredible. People that I've met, people that I know, or people that I don't even know were just reaching out and making me feel better. And it may sound like a really small, insignificant thing right now in hindsight, but in that moment, this sense of community is something that I needed desperately, because I was afraid. And so that's one part of this platform, I think, that often gets underlooked, because there are a lot of trolls and there is a lot of negativity that comes from it. But there's also a lot of goodness. There's a lot of relationships to be made, networks to be made, friendships to be made. And you don't always have to know somebody in real life to be friends with them. And this is just something that I will always take with me. And these are only a fraction of the tweets that I received from my tweet. And I thought it was really, really nice of these people to kind of, like be there for me. So I've lost so anyways, as the pandemic started hit, don't mind this tweet, I will explain it in a moment. As the pandemic hit, I found myself with a lot of free time on my hands. Now, I am a communications student. I graduated from pre-com in 2011, and I majored in journalism. Now, I didn't go into journalism, but I majored in it, and I love writing and I love telling stories. So one of my goals after reading Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, was to start writing. I thought, you know what? In the book somewhere it says, and this is not a direct quote, but it says something along the lines of, do something every day for 20 minutes and you'll get good at it. And I hadn't written really much since my daughter was born, and she's 6 now. Here and there, a couple of blog posts, but I thought, this is really important. We're in a pandemic. There's no better time. So I put this tweet out. Now, mind you, there's a lot that you can criticize about this tweet, and I wondered if I should put it in, but at the same time, it was authentic. It was me having a little too much wine and thinking, you know what, whatever, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to start writing. At the time, I didn't realize the reach that this tweet would get. Now, you'll see that it only has 16 likes. So I don't mean that it went viral. I don't mean that millions of strangers saw it. What I mean is that one set of eyeballs saw this tweet, and that changed the trajectory of my life. It changed the trajectory. Sorry, I just got braces not that long ago, so I have trouble speaking. I changed the trajectory of my career. And honestly, it turned this situation that I was into a bit of a Cinderella story for myself. It gave me a dream that I never thought was possible. So what happened? Well, 3 days later, I got a direct message from Paul Simin. Now, if you don't know who Paul Simin is, Paul Simin, he's the editor of the Winnipeg Free Press. And this message came out of nowhere. In fact, I thought he got hacked. So we followed one another, and I knew him for, I think, 2 weeks back in 2009 when I was an intern at the Free Press. Other than that, I didn't know Paul Simin. He didn't know me. But I had been tweeting little micro blogs of my life, since 2009. And I don't even know when he started following me or when I started following him. But I'd been tweeting and he'd been following along. And I guess one day, after I had said 3 days earlier that I was going to start writing again, he really took notice and paid attention. And this particular day, I took my kids to Birds Hill Beach because I didn't have a job and they were off of school and they weren't in daycare. And so we packed them up, I took them, and before we went, I tweeted this tweet about my kid waking up at 6:30 ready to go to the beach. They were very excited. And those are the things I tweet about. Often it seems meaningless, or it doesn't seem to have a lot of meaning. I'm not selling anything. I'm really actually just sharing an experience about my day or my life or my kids, or a funny anecdote, or just something that honestly seems silly, but anyway, it worked. So I was at the beach with my kids and I opened my phone and it was sunny and I could barely see, and I'm looking under my tent and I look and I'm like, oh my God. My sister was with me and I was like, I just got this text message. And she looked, and I thought, again, like I had said, I thought Paul had been hacked. So I took a minute and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, this is wild. This seems real. Is this a dream? And so I texted back and I said, here's my number. Feel free to call me at your leisure. And I was playing it so cool. Like, my hands were shaking and I was like, oh my God. Because I didn't want to screw it up. Even like, I didn't want to send the wrong response. Like, all of a sudden, everything that I've ever said in my life, like, seemed to kind of hit me. And I was like, oh my God, somebody has read my tweets, because often I don't realize that. And so Paul called me and it's funny because we were leaving the beach, and I don't know if you've been to Birds Hill, but there's a shelter at the end of the entranceway, or at the beginning, I guess, depending on where you are. And I was there with my kids, and they're all fairly young, like 12 and under. And the phone rings, and they knew how important this was. And everybody stopped, and you could hear a pin drop. And I listened, and I was, yeah. And I hung up, and I was like, oh my God, he offered me a column. He offered to let me write a column for the Winnipeg Free Press. Now, this is something that I had always dreamed of from the time that I went to journalism school. It's something that I thought that I never could do. And he had offered to have me send in some pieces of my writing based on the tweets that I had put in, or not put in, that sounds silly, based on my Twitter account and just sort of my tone and what I tweet about. And he said, you could submit some samples of writing. Let's talk about a monthly column. And so I did that. And I took some of my best tweets, and I turned them into 600-word stories and kind of gave some background information. And within a couple of days, he called me back, and he said, you know what, how would you feel about a weekly column? Would that be too much for you? And I tell you, I think I almost died, like right then and there. Like it's a lovely feeling to kind of feel like your dreams are coming true. So this was sort of the beginning of a big change in my life. And I still sort of, I knew it, but I didn't realize to the extent, because I had just been called back to my other job at Manitoba Liquor and Lottery. So now I would be freelancing and going back to work. So I guess now we're going to get to the point, like after sharing my story of how this has happened. And now I'm going to rely heavily on my notes, because I don't want to sound condescending, or I realize that a lot of you probably are more skilled at social media and have accounts and are doing great at it. And I don't mean to come across as scolding or telling you what to do, because if you're killing it, that's amazing. I'm just going to share things that have worked for me to kind of generate a following and to build relationships and to create opportunities for myself. So here we go. One thing I think that a lot of people do for social media and in social media, especially in businesses, is they don't really even want to be there. They honestly just want followers, and they want to sell a product or to become known. And that's great. Like, I want followers, and I want to become known, and I want notoriety, and I want people to read my stuff, but I also want to be there, and I want to invest my time in there, because one thing about social media is that it is a time suck. Even if you love doing it, it takes a lot of time. It takes away from your real life, and you get what you put into it. So a really important question to ask yourself, whether you want to start a social media account or if you have one, is, do you want to be there? Is it the right channel for you? And is it something that you want to invest your time in? And I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything from there, but so like for me, I guess another thing too is there's a difference between being on social media and building connections and being an influencer. And again, you probably all know this, but I know in the past there's been a couple of times that I've sold my soul, so to speak, for free items, or entry to a VIP event or something. And again, like, I'm sounding way cooler than I actually am. This has happened like once or twice back in the day before Instagram was really big. And it was cool. Not for me though, because I think like the one thing that I've always tried to do in my account is to be authentic. And if my heart's not totally in it and I'm tweeting and promoting something just because I want something for free, it doesn't work for me. I'm not good at that. So there's different avenues you can take, I guess. Number two is, it's really important to be sincere and engaging. I'm sure all of you are. This is just something that I know has worked for me. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes, like, social media has become this sort of platform that we all showcase our best selves, our best lives. You know, I'll take pictures of my kids in the clean corner of my house when everything else is chaos. Like, even behind me, there's a bunch of chaos. You know, and we kind of forget to be authentic because we're trying so hard to keep up with everybody else who is faking it. So I think one of the most important parts of having an online presence and being online and gaining followers and building relationships is to honestly just be yourself and be authentic and engaging. Sorry, I'm just double checking. I think building your follower base in a meaningful way means that you're also going to be reciprocal. So I used to fall into the trap of I always wanted to have way less followers than, or I wanted to follow less people than I had followers because I always thought that that looked cool and it made me look better. And it was kind of ridiculous because I was depriving myself of good content and building relationships because I wanted to look a certain way and it didn't really matter. So I think it's really important to be mindful of not just your presence, but other people as well, because you are there. We all are there to build relationships. I guess there's some people there to troll and whatnot, but keep the conversation open, respond to people. And even if you have a business account, you don't have to always be selling products or wares or even your brand. Like, I mean, I think the best thing that you can do for yourself is engage with people, and that kind of sells your products for you in a sense. And this one's really important, and I apologize if I kind of ramble on and read a little bit, because this was a really important message that I've been thinking a lot about since the chamber asked me to do this. And I talked to my partner Chris about it as well. His name is Low and Chris on Twitter if you want to follow him too. But grow. This is a really important journey, like not just in social media, but in life, but especially in social media. If you're going to be on Twitter for the long term, it means that you're going to grow on Twitter. Your life experiences shape who you are, and you are ultimately what you tweet about. You know, 10 years ago, I wasn't tweeting about children. Now I am, right? So that means the things that you tweet about now, and even the things that you believe in and care about now, they may change and they may develop over time, and you need to go with it and you need to own it, because so often, oh, there's an S down there. So often I think what happens is that we try to kind of hide from who we were and who we are, especially now in this day and age. And I don't hate cancel culture. I hate the term. I think there's an accountability culture, and I think that we all have to own our own accountability, because there are things, especially in this day and age, that we've probably said and done online that have been problematic or have been wrong, or any other, you know, tone that you've taken in the past. I know that I've said things in the past that I deeply regret and I deeply have shame of. I can't even think of them. I just know the person that I was and the person I am now. And I know that I am a different person in a lot of ways. So I think that's a really important thing to be aware of. I think that's an important thing for us to teach our kids and our businesses, and just kind of run our lives, because, you know, we're not all perfect. And it's okay, next step, to admit when we're wrong. Being wrong is a part of life, and it's definitely part of being on social media, and it's a really hard thing to do on a platform in front of a bunch of people, who you know, who you don't know, you know, to admit, okay, I was wrong and I did this. But I think that vulnerability, and I think that willingness to admit that you can be wrong and that you are wrong and that you can change your mind will take you far, not just on social media, but in life. And that's one thing personally that I struggle with a lot. I hate being wrong so much. I hate it. But it's also helped me a lot in my life to know that I make a lot of mistakes. It also makes for good content, I guess, for my column sometimes, because I make so many. And this one is really important. The last one for me is to follow diverse people and accounts. Now I'm really I'm ashamed to admit this, but a big moment for me was last year, after George Floyd was murdered. Um, I realized very quickly after that that my echo chamber and my accounts and my whole worldview was very narrow, because I was not following a lot of Black content creators. Not I wasn't following a lot of Black academics, friends. Like I have some Black friends. I'm not saying that I wasn't following anybody of color, but it really opened my eyes that I had put myself and my worldview into this chamber of the people that I follow, and I wasn't mindful enough to move forward and follow Black creators. And I started to, and I'm sure I'm still not the best at that, but one thing that has allowed me to do, it's allowed me to learn, it's allowed me to listen. I don't often respond to people when they're sharing of their experiences or their traumas, because it's not necessarily my place to share or to interject, but it's been a really incredible way to listen and to try to learn and understand a different culture and race and life than my own. Um, and I think that that's one thing that all of us can benefit from. Um, and so that if there's a takeaway from this at all, and you might again already know this, and I don't want to sound condescending, but if there is a takeaway from this whole presentation, I encourage you to kind of really look at your own social media presence and your own accounts, and really look at who you're following and expand it, because there are so many incredible people out there who are on this platform who are willing to share their knowledge and share their experiences, and it will make your life better, and it will make you a better person for it. And in turn, like, more people will follow you because of that too. Not that you're following people for follows, but it's just reciprocal. So that's the gist of it. If there's a couple more things that I would say, is that on social media, another thing that I have struggled with and that I'm learning to do is to set boundaries for myself. Well, I think it's really important for you to respond to people and to talk to people. You don't always have to. You don't owe people anything, especially when those anonymous people come and they try to take you down, or they try to call you out for something that you haven't done, or they try to put you in a weird position. You don't owe anybody a response. And you're worth a lot more than fighting with some anonymous person. And the next thing I would say is, for me as well, and it kind of goes back to admitting when you're wrong. Don't be afraid to apologize. If there's something that you've done, whether it's now, whether it's in the past, if there's something that you tweet out that's maybe problematic and maybe like you hurt somebody inadvertently. I remember last year I really upset somebody because I said I didn't understand the big deal about Halloween, and this really upset a couple of people. And honestly, I had no idea, but at first I was kind of like, well, that's ridiculous. But you never really know what people are going through. You never really know what things mean to people. And so there's really no harm in apologizing to people if you've hurt them. It doesn't even make you wrong half the time. It makes you right to know that you're apologizing for hurting somebody. So I would really recommend that if you have a platform and if you use it, and you have the tools to talk to people, especially people you don't know well, just know that you go in, even if you don't mean to harm people. If you do, apologize. And I guess the last thing I'm going to leave you on, and I know this is short, but maybe we can have a dialogue and talk after if you'd like, is choose what hills to die on Twitter. There are so many hills to die on. There are so many arguments. There may be even arguments that you agree with, but I think if you take a look back, and really look at certain arguments and certain positions that people have and that even you have, sometimes it's just not worth it to get into it on social media. Now there are hills that I will die on, and there are things that I believe wholeheartedly in, that and people I will fight for and use my voice for. But there are other things that I still believe in that I just, even currently that I don't necessarily feel like going into a big argument with people on Twitter, because it's not worth it. It's not going to change people's minds. It's not going to make anything better. My rule of thumb is if I think it's not going to make things better, or if I think that my voice is not going to matter, then I'm not going to do it. Now, again, like I said, that there are some causes and issues and people that I will, even if it doesn't make anything better, I will fight to the death. But I have to choose my hills, because I will go crazy and I'm very sensitive. So that's my advice. That is my presentation. I know that we had slotted an hour, and I'd hope that maybe we can, if anybody has any questions or comments or anything to share, I'd love to open the floor now. Oh, wait. Also, let's connect. This is my contact information. I'm going to leave it on that. But yes, if anybody would like to talk or share or ask a question, I would love that. I don't really know how to work with Zoom, so Riel, if you could help, that'd be awesome.
Thank you, Shelley. That was fantastic. If anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to just turn your camera and audio on and we can have a conversation here.
And if you don't feel pressured either. I just want to be chill, be friends with you all.
I also put, I know Shelley has her Twitter up there. There's a link in the chat as well if you just want to jump to her page.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry, my video is not working. I got a new camera and it's not working.
Oh, that's
this is a question that could be taken the wrong way, but have you ever paid for followers?
Have I? Oh, no, there's no question that can be taken the wrong way. No, I've thought about it though. In the early days, like I don't actually have a ton of followers either, but in the early days I had thought about it. I was really, really obsessed with the notion of having a lot of followers. Like I still kind of get hung up on it sometimes. But it becomes obvious, like when you tweet something and you have like 100,000 followers and like 3 people like your tweets. So that honestly, it wasn't even like anything else other than kind of my own vanity that stopped me, because I started to realize like a couple of accounts that I followed that had so many followers that had no likes and stuff. And also I'm a bit cheap, but but I know a couple people who have. I don't know if it served them well, but
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
No other questions, comments?
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Zoe.
Zoe.
I've seen conversations lately on replying to a tweet versus quoting a tweet to comment on it. So I'm wondering if you could, I don't know, tell us your opinion on that, and when one's appropriate, or why people have differing opinions about it.
Yeah, so like you're talking like the quote tweet to reply to the tweet, right, Zoe? Instead of just replying. So some, like in my opinion, I think that when people quote tweet, it's either a call out to make sure that everybody is seeing what this person has said, or it's to highlight what the person has said. But absolutely, like there is more of a motive behind quote tweeting somebody, because now you're putting them on your platform to either face the criticism that you're calling them out for, or face the praise that you're calling them out for. That's my opinion on that. And I think like replying, it might not even be criticism. I guess you might just be wanting to showcase what they have said. So again, it might not be negative, but I think people who quote tweet are definitely trying to showcase like what somebody else has said and use their platform to spread that, whatever they may be. Whereas the reply is literally just engaging with somebody and not really caring what the greater audience is thinking or has input to. That's my opinion. If somebody else has another thought too, I welcome it.
Thank you. So
Oh, thank you.
can I just follow up on that then?
Yeah, of course.
So is it safe to say that your reply typically is only seen by the original author or anybody else who's replied?
Your reply can be seen by anybody, and it does show up in the algorithm as well. But it's not, when you're replying to somebody, you're engaged in a conversation. When you're quote tweeting them, you're putting their message on your platform and then responding to it, like almost like commentary. So people can still see both, but the connotation of the quote tweet is you're now adding your 2 cents to kind of put it out there. Whereas with the reply, even though people can see it, you're genuinely just replying to the person in their message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there any other questions? Heather, were you jumping on to ask a question?
Yeah, sorry. I have a quick question. I don't use Twitter for work, but I am responsible for our corporate LinkedIn and Facebook accounts. And I'm finding it a challenge to have an authentic voice when I have to follow a brand strategy. So you want to have that connection and that authentic sound, but I also have a 200-page brand strategy that I'm working from.
Yeah, that is a really big challenge, especially with like the larger corporations. I know with Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries as well. Like when I first started, they were just starting social media, so I had a big hand in it, and they didn't take it as seriously as they do now. By the time I had left, like we had kind of gotten to that point as well, like where we had a strategy and we were using Hootsuite and sort of being more official with it. I think if you are able to deviate, and if you are like even a little bit by just taking a simpler tone, if people are messaging you, or even just using different sort of images or words. Like I know it's not much, and I think that to be completely conversational, you probably are, you have your hands tied because you're bound by this 200-page document, and I feel you so much on that. But I think that even just a tiny bit more of a casual tone, or fighting for an image that isn't so corporate looking, or even seeing if you could kind of talk to your supervisors or your bosses about, I don't know if you do this, but taking your own photos somewhere. Like sometimes the stock images, like they're great, they're beautiful, but sometimes like a candid shot is nice. And I know that I see your face. I know I struggled a lot with that too, but unfortunately, I think like with the work stuff, if you are bound, like there's not too much you can do. If you're able to kind of slide in a little bit of casual conversational tone rather than corporate tone, that's probably my best guess. Somebody else might have a better answer, but I fell into that a lot too with Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries near the end and struggled a lot with that.
Thank you. I do have a little bit of wiggle room. Like we're not a huge corporation. So yeah, thanks. I can work on that.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions from anyone or comments? Oh, there's some stuff in the chat here. Oh, yes. Barbara had a note. Should we all share our Twitter? So yes, please send your link to your Twitter account in the chat, and you can follow as you please. But I think if there's no other questions, we'll wrap up here. I just want to say thank you to Shelley for your presentation. That was fantastic. I know I struggle a lot with, I took the same program as Shelley, Creative Communications, and the first day that we started, it was like, everyone needs to start a Twitter account. And I remember I had like my high school Twitter account, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't use that for this, and starting a new Twitter account. And I think we had to tweet when we were in school, so I was more active on it.
Yeah.
And lately I'm just like, I will start typing something and be like, no, I'm not saying it perfectly, or it's not worded right, or I'm not sure about my grammar and punctuation, and so I just don't anymore. And I spend a lot of time scrolling on Twitter and reading other people's tweets, and then I find myself hesitant to engage. So I probably should take a little bit of the pressure off of myself to engage with people. And obviously there's some great relationships to be had, and I see people all the time that I'm like, oh, that's interesting, they're connecting and they've become online friends. So and there's
I think that there's a lot to be said about that as well. Like even like the I don't know, the cold call DM, like there's a new reporter in town actually that like I'm gonna go for coffee with her just because I was like, hey, I like your social media presence, let's be friends. Like it sounds kind of ridiculous, but you can tell a lot about a person based on their Twitter feed if they are active, because they will tweet opinions and thoughts, and you can kind of see, oh, hey, I like this person, I think they seem pretty cool, so they're like-minded like me. And you should absolutely don't take yourself too seriously. Typos happen,
yeah,
I think as long as you're mindful and thoughtful and go with it,
absolutely,
you probably have a lot to offer.
You might see a tweet from me in the near future. We'll see.
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you again, yes, Shelley, for your presentation. This was fantastic, and thank you all for joining us today. We did record this presentation, so if you want to come back to it, you're welcome to. The video should be up on our YouTube in the next few days. And if you have any other questions or anything, or if you missed taking Shelley's information down and need to connect with her, feel free to send me an email and I can connect you all, or of course you can find her on Twitter in her DMs. That's you'll find her quickly, I'm sure. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you all for your time today. And if there's no other last minute questions, we will end there. And I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.